GMA. And we want to start with the administration's offer to buy with a mass buyout to federal employees out there. How many do you hope will take it? And by what percentage does the president want to downsize the federal workforce?
Well, good morning, Michael. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me on the program. This is another promise made and kept by President Trump. He told the American people on the campaign trail that he was going to make our federal government more efficient and productive. And it is a fact that only 6% of the federal workforce here in Washington, D.C. actually shows up to the office. That is completely unacceptable. Middle-class Americans, our teachers, our nurses, our law enforcement officers who keep this economy working, show up to the office every single day, and President Trump expects that federal employees do the same. So his order, as presented in that memo last night, directs federal agencies to come up with a return to work policy for their agencies. And if federal bureaucrats in this city don't like that, well, guess what? They can resign from their positions, and this administration is offering them 8 months of pay. They will be paid through September just to simply resign from their positions. If 5 to 10% of the federal workforce resigns, it will save taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. And so, look, we want people to return to work. We have beautiful federal office buildings here in Washington, D.C. that American taxpayers are paying for. They should be used. That's what the American people.
He walked in confident, ready to dominate the conversation, fully expecting Karoline to stumble, stutter, or simply back down under the pressure of a live showdown. But the second he opened his mouth, everything changed. With calm precision and razor-sharp timing, Karoline flipped the entire script on him. She didn't just answer, she dismantled, exposed, and left him speechless in front of a stunned audience. What was supposed to be his big moment turned into her masterclass in composure and control.
Scientists.
Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment, and that's what this administration expects, and I think that's what American taxpayers expect. Don't forget, it's the American people who are funding this government, and they deserve people who are actually showing up to work.
Strawn walked in with that smug grin, the kind you only wear when you think you've already won. He tried to sound clever, throwing around buzzwords and talking points like he was hosting a TED Talk. But the moment he dared to dip into actual policy, Karoline pounced, not with anger, but with calm, calculated precision. Line by line, she dismantled his claims, exposing the cracks in his arguments like a seasoned pro dissecting a rookie's debate. No drama, no raised voice, just facts, clarity, and the kind of intellectual control that left Strawn scrambling for a comeback that never came.
Let's get to the funding part. The White House putting a freeze on federal assistance program. The federal judges put the freeze temporarily on hold, saying the government itself doesn't have the full scope of the programs that are going to be impacted. So what's your response to that?
Well, as I addressed in my first press briefing yesterday, this is a temporary pause on federal assistance and grants so that the Office of Management and Budget here in the Executive Office of the President can review all federal assistance that is going out the door. Again, President Trump promised the American people he would be a good steward of their tax dollars. And what we cannot do is fund programs that run contrary to the executive orders and actions that this president has already taken. So there will be no more federal funding for DEI programs. There will be no more federal funding for the Green New Deal, which is an order from the previous administration that President Trump has rescinded. It would make no sense for American taxpayers to pay for policies that this administration is no longer implementing.
He walked in thinking he could twist the facts about federal aid, sprinkle in some spin, and walk away looking like the smartest guy in the room. But Karoline wasn't having it. The moment he tried to bend the truth, she stepped in with razor-sharp clarity, cutting through the noise like a scalpel. She didn't just correct him, she flipped the entire narrative on its head, exposing his distortion point by point with facts, poise, and the kind of authority that left him visibly rattled. What he thought would be a political flex turned into a public lesson he won't forget.
So that's all this is, a temporary pause on federal assistance and grants so we can conduct a review of all of the money that's going out the door. And as I repeatedly stated yesterday, individual assistance such as Medicare payments, Social Security benefits, welfare, food stamps, and Medicaid assistance will not be impacted by this federal pause. So the American people should not worry if they're receiving individual visual assistance from the
When he leaned into chaos, throwing out half-baked talking points and hoping for a media-friendly soundbite that would make him go viral, Karoline didn't flinch. While he tried to drown the room in noise and drama, she stayed laser-focused. With calm authority and surgical precision, she cut straight through the noise, stripped away the theatrics, and exposed the spin for exactly what it was, a desperate attempt to distract from the facts. What he thought would be his moment in the spotlight turned into a slow-motion unraveling, all thanks to Karoline's clarity and control.
The case system was disrupted across the country yesterday. Online portals, they went down in response to this freeze action. So should that not have happened? And is that a sign of a chaotic rollout?
No, absolutely not. And I would like to address that. We were made aware of that immediately, and we amended the problem immediately. The Medicaid program is back up and running.
Then came the swipe at RFK Jr., a lazy jab dressed up as political insight, parroting party lines like a good little foot soldier trying to earn brownie points with the establishment. But Karoline wasn't about to let that slide. With the precision of someone who actually does her homework, she dismantled his talking points in real time. No theatrics, no raised voice, just pure, surgical rebuttal that turned his smug shot into a cell phone. He wanted to score a cheap win, but Karoline made sure he paid full price.
Okay, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's go to another topic. We have a lot to cover here. President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services has his confirmation hearing this morning, where his cousin, Karoline Kennedy, she's speaking out against him, calling him, quote, unqualified with dangerous and willfully misinformed views on vaccines, and that he is a predator. And what's your response to that?
I would reject those comments fiercely. RFK Jr. is widely respected. He's a great man who has dedicated his life to public service and to research. He is pro-science, and he is committed to making this country healthy again. He campaigned alongside President Trump, and they spoke that motto to tens of millions of Americans across the country who clearly believed in it. America is one of the richest yet unhealthiest countries in the world. If you look at our obesity rates, our autism rates, we should be performing far better. Our people should be much healthier. And that's all that RFK Jr. is trying to do. And so President Trump stands strongly behind him, and we look forward to watching him shine on Capitol Hill today in his confirmation hearing, just like all of the other nominees.
Strawn got smug, tossing in a cringy McDonald's jab like he was auditioning for late-night comedy, hoping for laughs, maybe even a viral clip. But Karoline didn't blink. She didn't flinch, fumble, or take the bait. Instead, with cool-headed poise and a look that said, "Is that all you've got?" she buried the punchline before it even landed. His attempt at wit collapsed under the weight of her composure, and what was supposed to be a MIC drop moment turned into a painfully awkward flop.
No more trip to McDonald's. We don't want to see those pictures again. All right. You know, the immigration crackdown is another topic. And if someone is caught in one of these raids, they're here with a legal status, they're a dreamer or a legally protected refugee, what's going to happen to that individual?
Well, we will deport individuals based on the laws of this country. That's all this administration is trying to do, enforce our nation's immigration laws. So if an individual is here illegally, if that means they crossed our southern border illegally, or they are overstaying their visa illegally, or they've been deported before and returned to the U.S. illegally, which we found in many instances, they will be subject to deportation. If someone is here legally, they will, of course, not be deported. That is not the intention of this administration.
Pulling out the usual emotional traps on immigration, he strutted in thinking he'd score easy points, the kind of scripted lines that usually play well on TV panels. But Karoline wasn't here to play. She didn't take the bait, didn't let the theatrics fly. Instead, she hit back with cold, hard law, chapter, verse, and precedent. Every attempt at emotional manipulation crumbled as she dismantled his narrative with facts so sharp they cut through the room like glass. By the time she was done, his grandstanding moment looked more like a legal crash course delivered by someone who actually knows the rules.
The Secretary of Defense announced that General Mark Milley's security details being removed, his security clearance suspended, and the Pentagon will be looking into whether his military rank should be reduced. Is this in retaliation for General Milley speaking out against the president?
No, this is another example of President Trump not believing that public officials should be subject to security details for the rest of their lives. There is nothing preventing the individuals who President Trump has stripped the clearances of from obtaining their private security, General Milley included.
But it only seems like it's for people who have gone against him in the past. It doesn't line up. It doesn't correlate with other people who have supported him. It's people who've gone against him. So why would that not be considered kind of discrimination towards those?
No, I would reject that. I think that President Trump has the right to make these decisions. And again, he doesn't think that taxpayers should be funding security for bureaucrats and for others who have served in our government for the rest of their lives. And again, many of the people you're citing are very wealthy individuals. They can.
His final blunder. Defending the indefensible. Those endless perks and golden parachutes for the same corrupt elites the public's tired of subsidizing. He thought he could wrap it in spin, toss in some patriotic buzzwords, and move on. But Karoline wasn't having it. With surgical calm, she peeled back the curtain, exposing the grift for what it was, a rigged system propped up by insiders protecting insiders. Strawn tried playing media games, tossing sound bites like Hail Mary passes. But Karoline wasn't playing. She brought facts, receipts, and a brutal kind of honesty that the cameras couldn't ignore. And just like that, the ex-footballer, all swagger, no substance, got steamrolled on national TV.